Tom, and he's one of the greatest graphic designer from Iowa, and now he's working at Fresh Produce at Sioux Falls. So he's going to give you some very good talks today. Welcome, Tom, and welcome, Elisa, as well. So Tom, this is Elisa, the dean of our school. And the students are here. Okay, it's your time now.
It's my time. Okay, here we go. Can everybody see this? Clap if you can see this.
I'm sorry, I just moved it. Yeah, they crowd. Everybody crowd. Okay,
great. I'm glad. All right, here we go. Welcome, Upper Iowa University Graphic Design Classroom 211. Thanks, Zhao, for having me talk. You guys are in luck because she is a brilliant designer, so you're going to learn a lot from her. So take lots of notes and do whatever she says. So let's get going. So welcome to the workshop, the logo workshop. Hello again. Round of applause again. It's Friday. We made it through week 2. Good job.
Hang there. It's Friday.
Nice. I like it. So my name is Tom Bates. I'm a graphic designer from Sioux Falls, South Dakota. And like Xiao says, I currently work at Fresh Produce, which is a digital creative marketing agency in downtown Sioux Falls. And I specialize in communication design and brand identity design. But where I grew up is Waverly, Iowa, which is 40 minutes from where you guys are, according to my screenshot that I took at midnight last night. So if you're in the area at Waverly, go to Joe's Nighthawk, get some wings. I went to South Dakota State University and I graduated there with a graphic design degree, but I started as an engineering major, but couldn't quite do the math and physics. So graphic design was an easy transition. And like a lot of you, I'm sure you grew up drawing a lot and are interested in art, and which got you on the path to graphic design. So when I first started, I had some influences that were kind of sort of like my gateway drug to graphic design. And it's these 4 dudes. So from left to right, we have Aaron Draplin, Jay Fletcher, Sagi Havid, and Alan Peters. And these guys are mainly logo designers, and that's what I love to do the most. So Xiao has this presentation, and if you want to look back and check these guys out, I highly recommend you checking out each one of these people, because you'll learn a lot just by listening to them talk and studying the way they create an icon in a logo. So that's what we're going to talk about, logo design. I'm going to run you through principles and best practices of logo design, and then talk about a case study that we did earlier this year that I worked on for a university, Black Hills State University. And we're gonna talk about this logo, how we came up with this and what all went with it, and the process of creating a really striking symbol. So the problem that Black Hills State was facing is that they had used this logo since the 1960s, or like a version of it. And they're ready to have a new, simple, and distinctive identity to meet the needs of a digital marketplace while strengthening their brand throughout the region. And this was their logo before. So they came to us saying like, hey, it's time for us to have this new identity. We have a new president. This logo isn't working out in a digital space. And here's why, because it's when it's tiny, it just flat out doesn't work, because it's so small, so complicated, and it's illegible. And that's exactly what a logo should not be. And when you're judging a criteria of a great logo, there's 3 things to think about. One, is it appropriate, right? So not appropriate like school appropriate type thing, but is it appropriate in a feeling, right? So if does it feel good with the project and does it fit? So if it's like a sports team, is it bold and dynamic? Or if it's fashion, is it light and elegant? Does it feel good? That's what you're looking for. So stop me if I'm going too fast. I think I'm talking too fast. Number 2 is distinctive. Is it distinctive and memorable? So is it distinctive and memorable and unique enough to sit in a person's mind when they see it for the first time? And a great test for any logo design is can you see it for a moment? And then can you redraw it from memory? And if you can do that, that means you have a great logo. And last but not least, it has to be and it needs to be simple. So a simple mark can go a long way, because what simplicity does is that it's able to make your logo legible in any size. So a logo has to work in any space if you're talking about brand identity, right? Because especially for a university, there's so many things to think about how a logo can be printed. Does it work on a student ID card or a lanyard or a billboard or in the turf of a football field? It has to work in all these aspects. So with Black Hills State, we kind of did an assessment of the original logo, and it cleared the first 2 marks, right? It was appropriate and it was distinctive, but it was not simple. So it failed on that end. So that's why we had to revisit and produce a new symbol. Let's see. Oh, so when I talk about a logo, I specifically talk about a logo is not identification. Oh, it's identification. It's not communication. And a logo does not have to tell a whole lot. In fact, a logo doesn't have to tell anything at all. It's a symbol and it represents you or your brand. It doesn't have to tell the story of the brand. It just has to identify what this brand is. And it's not, and a logo is not the sentence. It's a period at the end of the sentence. So that's just another metaphor. And you can create anything to be a logo, really, if it follows those principles. Even the square, like the H&R Block square, I mean, that's a great logo because a logo is a vessel of your brand identity. And you can imagine a logo, and this is how I present it to all my clients that when we do logo design. A logo is kind of like a cup. And the more you use it appropriately, and the more consistently you use a logo, you fill that cup with your brand equity. So if you're a great salesman or realtor, and you're very kind and honest and work very hard, and you have a logo that represents you, that logo now takes on your characteristics. So, I mean, the Nike swoosh is just a swoosh. It's only like 2 strokes. But whenever you see the Nike logo, you think of like, you know, just do it and the boldness that it brings. And the Nike swoosh does not communicate that at all. The way they use it communicates that. So when we're thinking about designing a logo, there's sort of a spectrum that you can think about. If you make a logo too generic, it fails. But if you make a logo too complicated, it also fails. And this takes practice, and it takes a little bit of discipline and willingness to try again. But a great logo is somewhere in between these 2 things. So if you go back to the 3 criteria of a great logo: appropriate, distinctive, and simple, that's where your zone is. Is it unique enough to sit in your mind? Is it simple enough to redraw it from memory? And is it appropriate? So our solution to Black Hills State was that we started off doing independent research and conversations with faculty and staff and students. And that gave us some insight of what makes BH special to study and grow. And early in the process, we explored some of the most common themes in our research, from heritage to growth and to nature to adventure. Because Black Hills State is located in Spearfish, South Dakota, and in the middle of the Black Hills. And so that community and those students really value outdoor activities and outdoor adventure. And so through committee and campus-wide feedback, we learned how important it was to honor BH's history, while also now acknowledging the role that Spearfish plays in creating a whole life for a student and for the people. So this is a really simple outline of how a logo process works. First, we interview as many people as possible to gain an insight to what we think could be a great direction. And what we did when we interviewed these people, we created what's called a brand noun list, which is a trick that we use because one of the criteria that we had with working with the university is that the university wanted us to work with the graphic design students in creating this logo. And so what we did when we interviewed these people, we asked them to list out every noun and every adjective that they could think of that describes and represents and tells us what the school and Spearfish mean to them. And we had like 1,700 words to sift through. And that actually turned into our mood boards. So it wasn't really a visual mood board, but it was more of a language mood board. And when we were looking through these 1,700 words from our interviews, we categorized them to 6 different buckets. And we told the story of each bucket, and those ended up being a mood board for each direction. So initially we presented 6 directions, 6 logo designs, and then narrowed it down to 1. So after the mood boards, it informed us with the logo sketching, and then we presented it to the committees, which was tricky just because there's a ton of people. But then we worked with them, and then we refined the final logo design and launched the identity. So after we had the conversation with the people, we went out to Black Hill State again and took photos of like their history and elements of the school and the surrounding area to inform us of some design direction. And one great tradition that Black Hill State has is that every year they do this thing called Hike the H. And they have a big H on top of the mountain right next to the campus, and it's painted white. So every year the incoming students will hike the mountain and repaint the H white. And we're like, oh, of course it has to be like that. Like that is the direction, because that tradition is so firm and it's just totally obvious. So and then when we got there, we just did a ton of logo sketches, and these are just a few. We had probably 200 sketches, like really fast, really quick. My advice to you when you're sketching a logo, set aside 1 hour. So there's 2 ways to do this. You can have a timer, set aside 1 hour to just do sketches and see how many you can do in an hour, right? Don't do anything else. Just like focus your time on that 1 hour and just sketch as many ideas as possible, even if they're bad ideas, because bad ideas will inform the good ideas. And then once we had like a good direction, we brought it into Illustrator, and then we just did probably 200 more sketches of each logo. So we're really digging deep and making sure that we're doing it correctly, and exploring every direction. So these are 47. We probably had and that's just like for one direction. So we ended up with this mark. And when we were pitching the idea with this mark, since outdoor life is so important to the people on campus, that our insight was that not only are we designing a logo for the school, but we're also designing a logo for Spearfish, South Dakota, and the Black Hills. So it was just like thinking about how people in New York wear a Yankees cap, but they're not really a Yankees fan. They just love New York. It was the same idea, and they loved it. So we have the B that reads first, we have the H that reads second, and then we have the tree inside the H in the negative space. So it's kind of like this tunnel effect when we were crafting the logo. Also, tip, when you're designing a logo, always design in black and white first, no matter what, because if it works in black and white, it can work with any color. And when we're presenting a logo, we have to show it in all applications, as many as possible, because we're trying to convince these committees that this logo will work in any situation, right? So what does it look like with the name attached to it? Or what does it look like if the name is horizontal on a website or on a letterhead? What's it look like in a badge form, right? So we're thinking about all these things and how people could use the logo in different ways. And that's part of the user experience that you have to think about. And it comes in your interviews when you can think about that stuff and how the logo will live out in the wild, right? What does it look like as a pattern? And then where do the colors come from? So this is Spearfish Canyon, and we updated the colors a little bit. So that's like evergreen green and then fall yellow. So use your surroundings to inform your design. Yep. So what does the logo look like? Inverted colors. What's a secondary logo look like? BHSU. A lot of people have that. And then typography. How does typography work with the logo? So if you're doing like College of Liberal Arts or admissions or outdoor education, it all has to fit and work together. And we chose, and one thing that we wanted to do with this identity was use a very distinctive and unique typeface. So we actually went to this European font foundry and found this font Messina because it was A, beautiful, and two, no one else in the region was using it. So even if the logo didn't appear, we can still use this font and still enforce the identity. Yep. How's it look like on a website? How's it look like on a drawstring bag? Letterhead, business cards, enamel mug, lanyard, a book, another book, an app, social media. It all has to work. So when we were presenting this, it was more and more obvious that they were going to choose this direction because it hit all the criteria that they were looking for. Got to think about the bookstore. People want some gear. How's it look like on campus out in the wild? So when we were finished, we had this nice timeline of all the logos that Black Hill State has used throughout the existence of the school. And you can see from like 1941 to like 2021, they've used essentially the same logo. So it was tough that way because this new symbol that we created was not like anything that they had before. So we were scared that there was gonna be a lot of pushback, but it was the exact opposite. We got a lot of praise and a lot of relief from the university and the people who love the area. So before I switch gears and talk about fresh produce and the internship, are there any questions about anything that I talked about with logo design and how to think about a good mark or user experience?
Questions? I know everyone got questions here. I'll start from Harry. Yeah. Or anyone have questions already? You can ask any questions.
Yeah, I'll ask you a question. When was the last time you cried happy tears?
Okay, I'll go. The dean will go. All right, my last happy tears was I laughed so hard because I was so happy on not the last episode, but the episode before of Ted Lasso. So
Yeah.
I was very happy and very excited.
Fun.
Yeah. And you have questions for like?
What would be the best like process in terms of like tailoring, finding that sweet spot of like too simple and too complicated? Like, how do you tailor that more so?
It's trial and error. So when you're sketching, either on paper or in the computer, you can do any idea that comes to your head and really try to discover what that logo is going to be. So like get everything, all your ideas out of your head and onto the paper. Because once that's there, then your head is clear to think about, okay, this isn't working, or can I take something away from this complicated logo to make it a little bit more simpler? So you have to look at your work objectively, and think about like, is this working, or do I need to add something or tweak something? One trick that I do when I'm doing a logo design is that if I start out with an idea and I want to make multiple iterations of it, I'll change just one thing at a time. So if I'm working on like a bee, can the bee be, have a curve in the middle of it, or is it solid, or is it thin, or is it sans serif, or is it a slab serif, or is it spiky, or is it smooth? You can just change one thing at a time through your logo process, because vectors are free. There's unlimited vectors in your Illustrator document, so use it up, and you'll find the sweet spot eventually. It just takes time. You just got to keep working at it.
Tom, have you worked with clients before? And do you feel like sometimes that you have to educate them quite a bit on like not going? Because I have seen many times where the complicated, because they want everything into it.
Yep.
And so
Yep.
how do you go about educating some of your clients sometimes?
It's a lot like what I did in the presentation. I do that almost every presentation. Before I show them the logo, I tell them exactly what I was telling you guys today, that here's the criteria of a logo, and it's not communication, it's identification. And once they understand that, they're like, okay, they'll have like an open mind to what they're going to see next, because it's usually really simple. And a lot of people who aren't in design think that simplicity is easy, right? So like, and more is better, which is the opposite, and that's really naive to think about. So, and being kind, so you're not trying to talk down to someone when you're educating them, just kind of like letting them know, like, hey, this is how we do it, and this is the process, and this is the criteria of a good logo on our standards and industry standard moving forward. So does that answer your question? Okay.
What about others here? Sam?
For the process of making that logo that you just showed us for the school, how long did that take? Like, what?
Oh God. I mean, we initially started with 6 different logo directions. And we had meeting after meeting, cutting down, like eliminating to 4 and then to 2. And then from those 2, it was just rounds and rounds of revisions to like get it right. So it probably took, that little symbol probably took 6 months to make. So that's just the nature of working with a large committee like that. But if you're working with like a coffee shop, it could be like a month.
But Tom, did that 6 months include all of the interviews and going out there to Black Hills?
Yeah, that included.
That was
everything.
all 6 months?
Yeah.
I would say that's pretty fast.
I know firms that take like 2 years to make a logo.
Yeah.
Sometimes making a logo is taking a lot of time, but you're not going to make a logo in 2 years in this class. And also you can ask any question related to your project. Like if you're confusing how to find a direction, you can ask Tom's like suggestion maybe. Anyone? Really good at giving you guys inspiration. If you're like, maybe David, you're like, I'm not an artist. Maybe you can ask him some like artist question. How do we?
How do you go from a sketch to making it look that good up on screen? Or what's the best way to get lines for stuff?
That's a good question. I actually have some sketches right now. This is for a different project. But if you can see my screen, oh God,
Technology.
blurry. So it's all about just taking what you have on paper, even if it's like fast and loose, and using geometry, like simple shapes to build it out, right? So like we have more stuff like this little icon. I mean, that's 4 triangles, or this thing. That's like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 rectangles. So in your sketching, you can sketch fast and loose, but you have to like keep in mind like, okay, how are you going to build this? And what I always use is like geometry, right? So nice shapes like circles, squares, triangles, and that can get you a lot farther than using the pen tool.
Yeah.
But still use the pen tool. It's your best tool.
Good job. Anyone want one more question? Anyone have? You can ask something related to your project. One last one. We'll take this. Cody?
What's the best way to kind of choose your font? Like, I know I had asked Shell with the better to kind of try to stay simple and old school. Is it better to kind of look at the new school fonts?
How to pair a font with a logo?
Yeah, like, is it better? Are more people wanting the old school or the new school? Kind of the new generation one.
What do you mean by old school and new school?
Kind of like the old school. So like when I think old school, I think of like the diner fonts. You see a lot of the old school diner fonts versus a logo like Walmart, how they changed it.
Oh, sure.
Like serif, just in serif.
Gotcha. Yeah, so for Black Hill State, I mean, we looked at the geometry of the symbol. So it's thick and it's a serif font because it has the serifs on the end. So we wanted to pair it with like a header font, Black Hills in the black, that kind of shares that same geometry. So a rule of thumb when you're pairing fonts with a symbol is that the font and the symbol should look like it was made by the same person. Right? It shares characteristics. Does that help?
Yeah.
I mean, that's a really simple answer.
That's a very important, and I think I still having this question for myself every time. Like you have the logo, how you pair the good fonts with it. It's hard.
Mm-hmm. And that takes a long time. Like for Black Hill State, we tried probably 30 different fonts, and a lot of it's kind of like casting a wide net and kind of like whittling down to what works best, and then either customizing the logo to fit it better. And that's what Walmart did. Or using font as is.
Thank you. Thank you, Tom, for answering. No, it's not finished yet.
So I know you guys are students, and every year, Fresh Produce, the agency that I work for, we do this internship called, oh wait, hold on. We have an internship every summer called Famous, and what it entails is like a mini agency within an agency. So the interns share have their own agency and they work on their own clients. And I encourage you all to apply. So what Famous is a collection of 3 people, a designer, a copywriter, and an account executive. And I have a couple videos here to kind of show you what the stuff that we work on and kind of like our tone at Fresh Produce. So hopefully the volume works okay. So let me know if it sounds good. I have 2 videos. This is a 2-minute video. And then another one is I'll show you that. Can you hear that? Okay, hold on. Time out. Did that sound okay?
Yep.
Okay, hold on. Whoopsies. And I got one more video for you. Just kidding, hold on. Ignore me, ignore me.
Fresh Produce is a branding and marketing agency in downtown Sioux Falls. We do all kinds of work, but video projects are probably our favorite. Over the years, we've worked with all kinds of really talented cinematographers, directors, and post-production specialists. They really help bring our ideas to life. Unfortunately, none of them were available to help us with this video, so we actually had to have a couple of our writers do everything for this one, from shooting to sound editing to post-production. We're very proud to be a sponsor of this year's Sioux Empire Film Festival because we know a lot goes into making a great film. There's camera angles, graphics, lighting, jibs, edits, jump cuts, smash cuts, color correcting, continuity, jibs, flashbacks, voiceovers, continuity, and jibs, and soundtracks. So from all of us at Fresh Produce, we want to say congratulations to all of the filmmakers featured in this year's festival. And to all of the festival attendees, enjoy the show.
And that's some of the stuff that we work on. Yeah, Famous. It happens every year. It opens up, I think, in February, so feel free to check out Fresh Produce at pickfresh.com or follow us on social media at pickfreshsd, or you can email me anytime. Xiao can give you my email if you need it, tom@pickfresh.com, and feel free, guys, seriously, to reach out and do like a portfolio review if you want some extra eyes and some feedback. So yeah, thanks for having me on. Hopefully it was helpful.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah. Any more questions? No more. Okay. So thank you so much for Tom, like taking extra time for presenting your whole experiences, and you definitely doing very great on logo. And I know you are going to have a presentation on the logo con this
Yes.
January.
Yep.
So you guys have like a premier review of what he's gonna show in the future, and just hit him up. He's super nice. And you have any questions, just you can can they DM you from Instagram or you just want email?
Yep. No, you can
Okay.
shoot me whatever you want.
Very good. So we know each other because we participate in the AIGA competitions. So we compete each other. So
Yeah.
like we compete, and now we know each other, like, so we know very well. So I encourage guys to just reach out to all the resources from all different organizations or company. So you find a lot of good like designer friends in the future too.
Mhm.
I love their internship program. It's amazing because you can do design, also you can work on art as well. It's very experimental. So if
Yes.
you're not, you can think about it in the next couple of years because it always has this program there.
Mhm. I was an intern, actually. I started there as an intern and got hired.
Mhm. All right, thank you so much. And now they have their time to work on their logos. Struggling again. Struggling stars.
Well, great. Thanks,
All right.
thanks everybody. Let me know if you need anything. Just feel free to reach out.
Thank you.